Today I'm going to introduce you to a manga that came out in 2009 called Nozoki Ana. The main character, Tatsuhiko Kido, moved to the big city and went to a local college. But as is always the case, especially in manga, things didn't go a bit according to plan. While he and his friend were drinking beer to celebrate his arrival, the guy discovered the hole that led to a neighbor's apartment and shared his worries with his buddy that sometimes he felt someone's eyes on him. As the malt beverage came to an end, the evening drew to a close. Waking up from his hangover, Tatsuhiko saw a light in the crack and looked into it and saw a girl masturbating. At this point, he should have already called the police, but fate decided to make a twist. The stranger, sensing the stranger's gaze, crossed it with the protagonist and nestled into the hole, looking into the souls of readers and Kido. This event led to the protagonist already standing in front of his neighbor's door, and, gathering his courage, pressed the bell, expecting a negative reaction. The door was opened to him by a very nice girl, and the guy made another illegal attempt to continue his conversation with her without letting the stranger close the door behind him. Stumbling over this and falling into her apartment, we were thrown another cliché in the face, and the main character's chest. Sprawled out in this pose, it finally dawned on Tatsuhiko that prison doesn't seem so fantastic. Reinforcing this development, the girl recorded everything that was happening on camera and under the threat of screams. The protagonist briefly calmed down, noticing that the hole was usually covered by a mirror, but today it was not in its usual place. Telling his roommate about the hole, Kido was embarrassed by her response. "So I'm exposed. Peeping at people turns me on." Introducing herself as Akuno Emeru, she offered not to show the pictures to the police on one condition. The heroes would have to peep at each other. And so begins our story. In reality, the guys discussed the minor details of peeping for a while longer, but we are not interested in them. The most important thing is that the heroes change their position every day, and it is impossible to close the crack. Kido was reluctant to agree, but thanks to Emeru's blackmail and the prospect of going to jail, Tatsuhiko was forced to agree. As a reminder of the deal, upon returning to the apartment and looking through the crack, Kido saw a note that the rules begin at dawn. The hero's morning began with 5 stages of acceptance of his new position. In the end, before leaving the house, he remembered that today it was his turn and his interest in seeing what was out there prevailed over his willpower. Seeing Amira, who was in whatever she was wearing, Tatsuhiko, blushing, ran off to study, and the girl, hearing some noise, opened the door and, smiling evilly, led him on his way. Next comes the reader's introduction to the secondary characters, but we don't get to them yet. In the process, we learn that our main character is not particularly interested in learning, especially drawing, rather moving away from his small town. After showing us the cliché about the country boy who moved in search of a better life, the author doesn't let us exhale after this twist, and we learn that Emeru also goes to his college, and they are also in the same class. The next morning begins with our Kido, oblivious to the prospect of experiencing prison romance, coming to Emeru with a complaint, but quickly cooling down and asking her not to tell anyone about the fact that they are roommates. Agreeing to this, the girl comes up with a new rule. They will avoid meeting each other as much as possible, so that it will not create problems in the future. Though the characters agree, events line up so that they meet at a classmates get-together. But attention now shifts to another character, Yuri, who begins to have a connection with the hero. As time passes over the drinking, the guys say goodbye and begin to slowly drift apart. The draft, of course, adds to the awkwardness, lifting the skirt of the leaving Amira. Well, our silly hero is not hiding staring, which notices his companion. However, she is not embarrassed by this, and under a strange pretext, Yuri offers to come to Tatsuhiko's house. Having hesitated a little because of her roommate, Kido agrees. His guest cooked a delicious dinner, and after a hearty meal, the guys moved on to dessert. The guy, kissing for the first time, forgot about the crack in the wall from which, not hiding his pleasure, Emeru watched the process. Let's cut to the bed scene and recap. Yuri ate a fruit stick, Emeru was busy with herself, and Tatsuhiko was having a parade of crinas trying to close the hole. As always, at the most important moment, the girl's phone rang, her father urgently demanding that she return home, so she hastily gathered herself and decided to leave, promising to do it all over again. Our boy's testosterone kicked in. Once again gathering his will into a fist, he tried to stop peeping, but the unperturbed neighbor told him in detail how she had masturbated and that she had enjoyed his penis. Embarrassed, our Tatsuhiko ran home, saying that he'd rather wear an orange suit in prison than tolerate the whole thing. Emeru, having realized that the fish is ready to fly off the hook without fear of being caught in the frying pan, deftly manipulates that dear to the protagonist's heart. Yuri learns about all the adventures of Kido and his neighbor. The possibility of sexual intimacy turns out to be more important than mental health, and he, once again, walks away without accomplishing anything. He did not tolerate the situation completely and decided not to spy on his neighbor anymore and to get a part-time job so he could come home later. That's how his gray everyday life went on. But nothing is ever quiet, especially in a manga like this. He is met at his studies by Yuri, who presses Tatsuhiko against the wall in a closed classroom, insisting on doing everything here and now. But our boy is not ready for such an extreme and refuses, agreeing to continue things in a more intimate setting, and after saying goodbye they scurry off to their studies. His thoughts on the prospects of baking cupcakes are interrupted by a minor character. Let's call him asshole, then you'll understand why. He asks Kido if he can hit on Amira. Our hero doesn't mind, hoping it will solve the peeping problem, although a small note of jealousy and resentment creeps in. As Tatsuhiko leaves his class, he notices his roommate chatting very nicely with asshole, and his classmate notices this look, adding fuel to the fire and saying that Kido and Emeru would make a good couple, but the guy is no match for her. With these thoughts in mind, the protagonist returns home and notices asshole and his roommate entering her apartment. Trying to hide, the girl spots Kido and with a glance invites him to spy on her, because today it's his turn. Entering his apartment, Tatsuhiko begins the third stage of the acceptance process. He haggles with himself over whether or not he should peek, imagining his neighbor spending the evening with her guest. At the same time, our couple in the apartment next door are sitting drinking tea. Because, as it turns out, they came to visit to discuss something important about Kido. It was under this pretext, realizing that Emeru is infatuated with Tatsuhiko, that the asshole got into her apartment. He decided to tell her a bad rumor about GH, and that rumor, drum roll, turned out to be, what do you think? That's right, that he's getting weird with Yuri. This certainly doesn't come as any kind of surprise to us. In fact, neither does Emeru, as she, like the reader, was almost directly involved in the weirdness between Kido and Yuri. But the cherry on the cake was the insider's duck that GH tried to rape Tabaki-san. Emeru, of course, starts laughing, which in turn adds to Kido's desire to look into the crack. The asshole is not happy with this reaction, and Emeru pours fuel on the fire by calling him a codger, adding that people like him are the ones she hates the most. There is a loud noise and a curtain, and Tatsuhiko can't stand it. Leaning against the hole, sees his roommate making out with his classmate. This asshole, now you see why, shows his true nature by his attempted rape. The girl tries to fight back, but she doesn't do well, and in tears she casts a glance at the crack. She's in luck, because our protagonist has changed his mind about leaving and decides to peek again. While Emeru smashes a cup over asshole's head, we as the reader are shown, once again, that the girl is very clever at playing on the emotions of others, laughing at asshole's size, because our Kido has a much better one. The latter gets a little hysterical and makes mischief on the girl, as suddenly, Tatsuhiko decides to stop sitting around and do nothing, forcing the offending neighbor to leave. A creepy goodbye to the asshole takes place, and Amira is hurt by the unwanted visitor. But all this horror doesn't stop her from rejoicing in the most important fact of all. Kido was peeping on her. She decided to show him everything up close as a goodbye. The guy shouted that he hated her. The girl, in turn, said that she liked him. Cringe parade. Just the way we like it. In the morning, the roommate rang Tatsuhiko's doorbell, said she wasn't offended and thanked him, not forgetting to tell him how well she had jerked herself off this morning watching him. Typical college student Monday. Moving on. I think you've figured out by now that the author is a fan of taking an emotional swing. Next comes the meeting at the cafe, just like last time. The company had fun talking, and as everyone was breaking up, Yuri decided to give our protagonist a blowjob behind the garages. So quick, why? Tabaki wanted a protein shake. Who's gonna stop her? Next comes Yuri's jealousy scene, because she sees that Kido looks at Amira in a special way and wants to cement their bond with the hero with sex. They quickly take a lav hotel, and while the girl is in the shower, the guy realizes that his device is at 6:30 and tries to figure out why this is. After all, he loves her. We are helped to draw conclusions by Emeru, who calls and begins to tell in detail the recipe for making homemade dumplings, adding that she will only let Tatsuhiko try them. Kido gets his ass burned, all as usual, but most importantly, Yuri notices, coming out of the shower, his tool was ready to use. We, as readers, realize that the kid has already started having head problems, just like his roommate. An uninteresting intimacy scene takes place, with Emeru fantasizing about how cool it would be to see her. Let me know in the comments if you want a sequel, and I'll be sure to take down part 2. Thank you for watching. Bye everyone.